Audio lecture for G3 Intro A, B, and C Spatial Reorganization. This is the lecture that goes along with the College Board materials for the geography component of this course. G3. So, question to consider. Why do people live where they live? As you see early civilizations around 3000 BC, you see pockets of civilization gathered around river valleys. Egypt around the Nile River, Mesopotamia between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. You see in northern India gathered around the Indus River Valley, and of course China around the Huanghe River, also known as the Yellow River. Why there? Do the rivers have something to do with it? Yes, rivers provide water for the soil for agriculture. So, spatial organization. People live where they live due to these kinds of reasons: economic reasons, cultural reasons, political reasons. Can you give an example for each kind of reason? Think about that. Key question: what causes changes to spatial organization? Some places have it all, meaning that some places can fulfill all of the reasons why people like to live somewhere that we mentioned earlier: economic, cultural, and political. Can you think of a city that, quote, has it all? What happens where places have it all? New York City is a place that seems to have it all for some people. Economic reasons, it is the heart of the economic sector for our country, Wall Street. Cultural, of course, lots of cultural center there with Broadway, art museums, what have you. And political, it's also a hotbed of political activity. This is why some areas have a higher population density. That is the consequence of having it all. Higher population density because it attracts more people there, like a magnet. Population density is how many people live in a given area. Density means how many in this case. What might be some issues with a high population density? Think about that. What are some of the consequences, both positive and negative? High population density often leads to spatial reorganization due to the fact that as more people come in, more space is needed. Exploring spatial reorganization. We're now going to work on workbook G3 Intro, pages 31 to 33, before moving on to the next section of this lecture. Spatial organization also is shaped by birth and death rates of a country. Birth and death rates are also shaped by cultural, economic, and environmental factors. Let's think about some ways how birth rates and death rates are shaped by those things: cultural, economic, political, and environmental factors. A way we can analyze the population and the future of a country is by observing population pyramids. Here's one in China. Population pyramid, population in millions by age group, divided up by male and female. Here's another from the Congo region. Again, population in millions, the age groups divided up by male and female. And here's the United States at the same time. Population in millions by age group divided up by male and female. Do you see differences between these three graphs? I think so. Here's one in Russia to add to it. Population in millions divided up by male and female based on age groups. Population pyramids workbook page for G3A, pages 35 through 36 will be done here before moving forward. Exploring demographics and spatial reorganization. How would birth and death rates affect spatial reorganization? Let's revisit that question. Now that you've done the work in the workbook, what makes you think, how do you think birth and death rates affect spatial reorganization? Food for thought. What influences spatial organization and spatial reorganization? How do birth and death rates affect them both? Now let's talk about human migration. The United Nations Summit for Refugees and Migrants met on the 19th of September 2016 at the UN headquarters in New York City to debate and to discuss the influx of refugees and migrant workers into the nations of the United Nations and how they would be handled and what kinds of spatial reorganization might be required as a result of the influx of these peoples. Think about this. What are some of the reasons that people move in the world today? What is the difference between a refugee and a migrant? And are immigrants beneficial to the world? What were some things that changed the spatial reorganization of the earth? What kinds of things do you think make people move from place to place? Why people move? Just some general observations. There are both push factors as well as pull factors. There are push factors. They are factors in a home country that push people out. Things that happen in that country that make people either want to leave or be forced to leave. What are some examples of push factors? Think about it. Pull factors. They're factors in a new country that pull people in or attract them in. What are some examples of pull factors? Think about it. Spatial, environmental, political, economic, and cultural factors lead to migration. They all can be involved in both push factors and pull factors. Think about how. So, exploring push and pull factors will be delved into more deeply with workbook work for G3B, pages 37 to 39, before going any further in the lecture. Now, how would migration impact both the sending and receiving society when migration occurs? How would migration impact both the sending country, the ones that are losing the people, as well as the receiving country or society, the ones that are receiving the people? The sending society, well, if the people leave forever, sometimes you'll see increased poverty, inequality, and sometimes political turbulence due to the loss of population, especially the loss of workers in that population. Sometimes you see what's called a brain drain. If a group of people that are leaving are the ones that are the highly educated folks, ones that know more about technology and science. An older society also. If the younger people leave, then the society that is left with an older population. Now, if they return, workers sometimes can return more skilled and educated. If they left to go to school somewhere and then return, then it could be okay for the country. It could be beneficial for the country, for the society. The receiving society, of course, lots of cultural diffusion. Remember, that's one of our major themes of this course. More workers incoming into the country that's receiving, but also less jobs available because more people for the same number of jobs means less jobs available. If jobs are scarce, this could lead to segregation and increased poverty and inequalities in the receiving society. It could also lead to a younger society where younger people who are migrating in ultimately outnumber the older people that are from the original population. So think about, how does migration relate to spatial reorganization? Now we're going to work on exploring migration and spatial reorganization in the workbook for G3C, pages 41 through 43, before going to the next part of the lecture. Food for thought. We will do this on paper and upload it to Canvas on a date that will be listed in Canvas at a later time. Examine the starter claim and then follow the directions below. This will again be on Canvas for you. It's about spatial reorganization. The starter claim is spatial reorganization is usually a result of migration. First of all, you'll explain how examples from the sources that you worked with in the workbook can be used to support that claim. Then in B, you'll explain how examples from the sources can be used to challenge that claim, looking at both sides of the issue. Then, using your thinking from A and B, you are to write a 1 to 3 sentence thesis that supports, refutes, or revises the claim. You pick which one you think is most valid. Be due on Canvas. Check Canvas for due dates.